What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here. We're repping America, the center, and common sense. Recently NBC did a poll where they factored, support, strongly support, mildly disagree, all that. And the Democrats ended up with a score of negative 22. And that ranks lower than what Trump, Republicans, and even ICE got on this survey. In fact, the only entity that was below the Democrats was Iran at negative 55. And look how much the Democrats are trying to intercede almost on behalf of Iran. We're going to look at that and a few other things. Let's get this going. Said Democrats rank pretty low right now. I mean, they are low-key rooting for Iran. They are low-key rooting for the war to go poorly for the U.S. so Trump looks bad. Because at the end of the day, these politicians, both sides of the fence, but in particular right now the Democrats, are willing to do anything to stay in power. Even if it means our servicemen or even our citizens getting hurt. And that's what's going on. They have, for the last 5 or 6 years, openly supported Muslims, Islam, radical Islam, over Christianity, Catholicism, and Judaism. We saw it in the riots that happened on college campuses where Jewish students were being harassed. I mean, just recently, 3 young men, all like career professionals. Their Facebook and Instagram filled with them shooting rifles and doing MMA. One of them is a lawyer. Another one is some sort of consultant. They heard a man speaking Jewish, Hebrew, and they beat him up in a restaurant full of people. And we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to continue on down this path, say the Democrats. I mean, they supported unvetted immigration. We saw that under Biden, where millions of people just streamed across our border. And a lot of them, while coming here for better opportunities, and I hope they succeed, a fair minority of them came over here to commit crimes. And God knows what else. I mean, it's really easy to send in a sleeper cell when nobody's watching the gate. They have supported criminals over citizens. We've seen that time and time again, especially here in California, under people like Gascon, where they were more concerned contextualizing why a bad guy did the bad thing than supporting the victims in any way. They didn't take victim statements at parole hearings. They didn't send deputy DAs and assistant DAs to be with the families of the victims. No, they were concerned with the criminals. And as we're seeing right now across our great country, they spend their money on pet projects, and then whatever's left over goes to basics. We saw that in Washington, D.C., where they spent $500 million on DEI initiatives in the waste treatment department. And then they had a giant sewer leak where like 200-something million gallons of untreated sewage poured into the Potomac River. All the while, they say they're on the side of the environment. And then they spend their money promoting ideals over common sense. They don't spend their money where they need to, and that's why we see some of the things we're seeing right now. Well, I mean, why does California want to release every criminal over the age of 50? To save money. But is that money going to go into helping solve or alleviate any of our problems? No, it's going to go into their pet projects like the damn bullet train that's running from not LA to not San Francisco. That's my big gripe with these people. It doesn't matter if I agree with 50% of their political ideology. It's that they're not applying common sense to their government. They're just not. I'm going to look at a few examples of that coming up here. I mean, right now in Virginia, they want to allow repeat offenders no cash bail. See, when you have a bond placed on you to let you out of jail, there is a bail agent who's willing to track you down to the farthest ends of the earth to get their money back. That's a great system because it allows the government, the police force to concentrate on active and current crimes while the bail agents keep track of these idiots. But they want to get rid of that. And I liked what the National Association of Bail Agents President Michelle Esquenazi, I hope I pronounced that right, We believe anytime recidivistic offenders are released due to unsecured bail policies, it puts communities in direct dangers. Like she said, this bill is in direct contrast to the needs of all communities in Virginia, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or independent. Criminals don't choose victims based on political ideology, and policymakers have failed to understand that bringing criminals to justice should be nonpartisan. Why is it that the Democrats have chosen criminals as their voting base? It's strange, and it should be strange to all of us. I mean, in amongst that article, there was a little headline: ICE nabs Iranian national with rape sodomy convictions after Virginia Democrats move to curb cooperation. These are people who are convicted of serious crimes. But Democrats have no problem just letting them back into the community when there is an alternative. Here in California, many people believe that, our city leaders and our state leaders have squandered billions in funds meant to alleviate the homelessness crisis. Right now, there's 72,000 people in LA County, at least, that are homeless. There are 6,200 plus RV encampments around. And in those dilapidated, rundown RVs, I don't know how they're getting them, they're unsanitary conditions. They're prone to catching fire, and they're hubs of drug dealing and property crime and fencing and all of that. But in LA, we want to think of it as those poor people's homes. There was a young carpenter, and he got fed up with it. It was across the street from his mom's apartment where he lived. And he got so incensed by the whole thing, he ended up shooting one of them. And the LA Times, while reporting this, has to make it clear to us that there's extenuating circumstances. The guy, the homeless guy was, involved with some bad stuff, but he was a foster child, and boo-hoo. We all have excuses. So many of us have excuses for why we could be doing bad things, and we choose not to. I myself went through a lot of those same problems. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction. I was a ward of the state when I was born. But I cleaned up my act, and I refused to be that criminal anymore. But when you just keep letting these people out of jail and keep playing softball with them, that's what's going to happen. In Minnesota, they have that giant fraud going on. The Somali healthcare fraud story that we've been hearing about. When they decided to finally have some hearings to get to the bottom of it, the human services officials just skipped the meeting. They just skipped the meeting. Why bother? Why bother? Nah, hey, who cares? Who really cares? The Fraud Prevention Committee chair, Kristen Robbins, said, "I'm incredibly frustrated that they ghosted us." Yeah. Meanwhile, a guy in San Francisco who described his sexual assault as his Super Bowl is being let out of jail. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for following home a young lady who had just moved to San Francisco, breaking into her apartment and sexually assaulting her. And now he's being granted parole because, he's old. Well, what? This is what the criminals, his name's Roberto Antonio Diladad, or some crap like that. This was like my Super Bowl of crime that night. This was going to be the thing that made me feel like a man. Yeah. And now he's coming out. Even though he has not completed any meaningful sex offender treatment programs, they're just letting him out. The governor's not going to be able to do anything other than recommend that they take a look at it. But he himself has admitted that he has not completed any sort of relapse prevention treatment. But because he's older, he's not going to do it again? Really, I mean, again, I'm in my late 50s. I'm pretty sure I could commit that crime. But they just want to let him out. The California Republican chairwoman, Corinne Rankin, said, "California Democrats have spent years weakening consequences for serious offenders and putting ideology ahead of public safety. Republicans believe that the basic job of the government is to protect law-abiding people, keep violent criminals behind bars, and stand with victims instead of making excuses for the system that failed them. In Virginia, a guy with a lengthy criminal history was let out because the DA didn't think he could win the case. He went and he stabbed a young woman to death, left her to bleed out at a bus stop. You're just trying to go about your life. And this guy who stabbed this young lady came from Sierra Leone in 2012, came here illegally, and even though he was ordered to be removed in 2020, they let him out of jail and let him back into the system, into the community. The DA that did it, Descanso, a Fairfax County attorney, was sworn into office in 2020 and has made leniency reforms a focus of their tenure. He even said on his own website, his goal is to mitigating racial and social economic disparities and countering mass incarceration. They like to say that. He got rid of cash bail. They think that if they let people out of jail, they can brag about having a low prison population. They side with the criminals. They side with the illegal aliens. They side with people who would rather destroy this country than be a part of it. They do, flat out. There's so many more of these stories. And there's a guy, Gregory Volgenstag. He molested 6 boys in the 90s. He was given 355-year sentence. He served 27 years, and because he's 57, they're going to let him out of jail. Like I said, I'm late 50s. I'm pretty sure I could kidnap or convince boys to come with me. I don't understand. The propensity to do this again still remains high. I don't care about their numbers. I don't really care much about, like at the beginning of the show, right? I brought you that NBC poll. NBC's not exactly really far left, but let's be honest, they are liberal. And their numbers show something that I think is against what NBC wanted to show. So I could kind of believe that poll. But when you're running these polls to try to convince people of something, it's very hard to take your numbers seriously. We got other things, so we're going to move on now. Before I move on, I want to make something very clear. I think, you know how I can do this? Somebody recently asked me if I actually voted for Trump. And I said, well, what was my alternative? And that's what has been going on for a few election cycles now. What is our alternative? I mean, Trump ran against Hillary Clinton, who I don't think can lead the country. Joe Biden, who I knew couldn't lead the country. And Kamala Harris, who I was scared to even let near the office. What were my alternatives? A lot of my beliefs are very progressive. In fact, I would dare say I was progressive before it became a thing for young people. I took political stances in a time when people didn't really take political stances all that much, especially at the age I was at. But what I'm seeing in California and Washington, D.C., and some of these other blue states, I know it's wrong. I know these policies on how they treat criminals is wrong. And I'm glad right now we have a guy like Trump in there, because I understand the problem of the radical Islamic person. I see the problem with it. I see that they use religion as an excuse to kill. The Democrats side with these people. And for some reason, well, not for some reason, a lot of these extreme Muslims vote Democrat because they know the Democrats will let them get away with it. This happened in 1979 in Iran. I've mentioned it before, that the hardline Islamic groups aligned themselves with the lefties and the commies. And then, when they accomplished their goal, they killed all those people. I just want people to side with people who are going to use common sense and do what's right for the most amount of people. I want a government that is not beholden to special interests, because on both sides of the fence, special interests are what destroys America. But like I said, we're moving on. Let's move on to this. In Michigan, this guy, Amon, naturalized U.S. citizen born in Lebanon, drove his car into a Jewish temple where children were at daycare. 100 plus children were there. Ran his car into the building, got out, started opening fire, and fortunately an armed security guard took him down. At Old Dominion University, a man who had been in jail for trying to fundraise for a jihad stormed into a classroom and shot a guy to death. He yelled Allah Akbar before other students stood up and subdued him. This guy right here says it best, I think. Dominic Evans, a special agent in charge of the FBI's Norfolk field office, said, The Reserve Officers Training Corps students showed extreme bravery and courage and prevented further loss of life. The students subdued him and, quote, rendered him no longer alive. He wasn't shot. The students killed him. Their bare hands. See, I want to be on the side of the people who will take on a gunman who's looking to just kill innocent lives. I don't want to try to figure out why he did what he did. He did what he did because he's a mean, evil person. It's good enough for me. Just like the guy that rammed into the temple. He was mad because his family had been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. Your problem is with Hezbollah, not with the United States, not with the Jewish people. But this kind of terrorism's on the rise. We saw that at that rally outside of Mandami's house. That surreal picture of some white protest organizer yelling about, immigrant rights and the power of immigrants and the fact that we shouldn't be shaming people of the Muslim faith. And reaching over the top of him is a guy throwing an improvised hand grenade in the name of Allah. Yeah. But then again, that's what you get when you have a religion that is, whose prophet was basically, married to a 6-year-old. Hey, I'm just saying, getting off on the wrong foot right there. But that brings me to the war in Iran. Weird Beard Jr., as he's called, just took over. The son of the last leader, Khamenei, or however you pronounce his damn name. I'm not going to learn how to pronounce your name. You're dead now. So much for the whole down with the monarchy of 1979. In 1979, Islamic religious leaders said that monarchies were forbidden under Islamic law. But sure, you want to put the son in charge now. You want to go back on your word, your hardline word. Well, that's fine, because he's basically just a corpse anyhow. They really have no proof that the guy's even alive. So there's been some interesting developments in the war over there in Iran. Israel has begun targeting the Basij militia. They're part of the Republican Guard or whatever. They're using social media posts from Iranian citizens who are basically tagging photos of these checkpoints or these hiding spots or these barracks, whatever they may be. They are using social media to point out where these people are, and then the Israelis are sending in guided munitions using geotags to blow them up. And meanwhile, the Israelis are also using social media to let the Iranian citizens know that your day of freedom is coming. They're even taking it a step beyond, and they're sending to individual soldiers text messages and direct messages saying things like, we know who you are, we know what you've done to the Iranian citizens, surrender or flee or die. Social media is becoming a tool of warfare, and it's a powerful piece of equipment for these partisans on the ground. They're sending the coordinates. You can literally go on the internet right now and see Israeli bombs, drones, missiles, rockets, whatever, landing in the middle of these compounds and blowing them up. And then the Iranian citizens are going and taking pictures of the destruction, geotagging it so Israel knows that it hit the target. You understand this? Iranian citizens are working with the Israelis to bring down the regime. We are on the side of right. Trump is on the side of right now. We are not sending Iran pallets full of cash like Obama and Biden did. We're sending them missiles and rockets because that's what they deserve. You know, back in '88, Trump was talking about this Kerrang Island. People might not know this, but Iran, around the coast of Iran, is very shallow. So it's hard to get like something as big as an oil tanker into any of their docks. So they use this island. They pipe the oil out to the island, and from the island, they put it on ships. Trump has begun attacking that. He knew this back in '88, that if you took this island, it wouldn't matter who ruled Iran, because we would have a stranglehold on their oil. They try to build outward pipelines going out of their country, in other directions. We could always shut that down. I know that regime change hasn't always worked for the United States, but I think we're due a victory, and I sense that Iran could be that victory. I sense that overall Iranians don't want to be part of this terrorist financing, evil, maniacal country. They want something that's peaceful and prosperous. And we can do that if we take this. One of our White House advisors said what we want to do to get such massive oil reserves in Iran out of the hands of terrorists. What we want to do is to get such massive oil reserves in Iran out of the hands of terrorists. That was Jared Egan. Doesn't that make sense? Iran has been using their oil to finance terrorism all the way across the globe, in every nook and cranny. We're on the side of right here, folks. And we should be backing Trump, regardless of our political affiliations. All right, enough of that. Let's move on to other things. So, this guy Brad Reese bought a bag of Reese's unwrapped peanut butter cream mini hearts from his local convenience store. His quote is, "I took 2 bites and had to spit it out." Yeah. Yeah, you notice his name, Brad Reese. He's the grandson of H.B. Reese, the guy who invented the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup in 1928. They are now using less cocoa in their milk chocolate products. One of the reasons is that there's been a cycle of drought and floods in Ghana and the coast of Ivory, which combined produce about 70% of the world's chocolate. There's some diseases that are ravaging the cocoa crops. That's fine. But what is the solution? For a lot of people, it's been the shrinkflation. They're going down, they're doing less. One German brand, the Nestle-owned Choco Crossies, recently announced it was eliminating cocoa altogether from its new Snack Vibes line, replacing it with Choviva, a lab-grown, quote, chocolate alternative made from fermented sunflower and grape seeds. One reason cocoa prices are what they're at is because, again, we're putting ideology over practicality. The UK and EU, the European Union, have imposed strict regulations against buying cocoa. Sorry, folks. Cocoa from deforested areas. And chocolate companies everywhere have become aware of the poor optics of working with growers that use enslaved children as free labor. Yeah, that's really funny because they impose these restrictions on chocolate in the name of idealistic ideals, or whatever, however you want to say it. But when it comes to things like electric vehicles, they'll overlook all that shit. When it comes from iPhones made in China using Uyghur slave labor, they'll overlook that. but they'll go after chocolate. They'll take their stance on chocolate, but, we need these electric batteries and we need our cell phones. It's just hypocritical. Hopefully, Ecuador and Indonesia can replace West Africa as a top source of cocoa. I don't know why that word's so hard for me to pronounce today. But again, that plays into my Made in America scheme. Why don't we just grow all the chocolate in Central and South America? I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing when these people complain about the deforestation of the rainforest for cattle, and we keep buying Brazilian beef instead of revitalizing what we have here. We have plenty of land in the middle of this country to have cattle. Why are we not working on common sense laws, regulations, things like that to get our cattle industry going? See, that's the problem with these idealistic liberals, progressives, Democrats, left-wingies, communists, all of them, is they put their ideals above practicality. We can be doing that stuff here, but bit by bit, state, local, federal government has imposed these burdensome rules like we did in California where you got to give pigs more room. I'm an animal lover, but I don't give a shit what happens to these animals on a farm. We need the food. We need to be practical. Sometimes you have to sacrifice your ideals for practicality. That's just what it is. It's just what it is. It's no different than in war where you have to accept civilian casualties. Some things are that way. I feel bad for people who grew up in foster care, grew up poor, grew up desperate, might not have a lot of opportunities in life, but that does not give them the reason to commit crimes. That does not excuse criminal behavior. And maybe we could help these people if we weren't wasting all of our money on fucking bullet trains. Now, before I leave, I want to talk about this guy, Max Crosby. He's an LA Raider football player. He was traded to the Ravens, but that deal fell through. And after the deal fell through, all he posted in response to that was 3/11/20, 6 years sober. God doesn't make mistakes. Yeah. And that brings me to what I want to talk about in the close of this show. I've struggled with mental issues. I've struggled with alcoholism. I've struggled with drug addiction. I've struggled with losing my way in life. And I eventually had to turn myself over to a higher power and get sober. And I've been successful at that for 30 plus years now. Rehab is a cheat code. It makes you understand that excuses aren't worth a damn. I'm an alcoholic. Does that mean I should drink? I'm a drug addict. Does that mean I should do meth? I lost my way. Should I give up? No, I fought on. I do believe that God doesn't make mistakes. It's just sometimes hard to see what it's all about. Sometimes God has nothing to do with it. He just wants to see your reactions to things. It's not about religion, folks. It's about finding your center. I talk about the political center because that's where the answers are. Rooted in common sense, rooted in practicality. But if you are somebody who's listening to this show and you're struggling in life, I understand it's hard. I understand it might not be all that much fun. But I'll tell you something, when you're standing on your own 2 feet, you'll never feel better. And that's what I want for this country. I want this country to get back on standing on 2 good legs. Where people, politicians, we're voting for good ideas. We're implementing good ideas. We're not just pissing money down a rat hole. We're not dealing in this divided society. Hopefully next week I have some time because I want to talk about the society we live in right now and why we are so divided, because there are answers out there. But I thank you for your time. I love you all. I want the best for everybody. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. So are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And just let that beat drop and dance it out. Yeah, hit it, Steve.